Welcome to the Peace Whimsy Co podcast, where you'll find your sparkle, embrace your peace, and discover a little bit of magic for everyday self-care. I'm Jessie Frances, and today we're getting honest about the lessons chronic illness has taught me. Lessons I never really wanted, but I definitely needed. So there are a lot of things that we kind of have in our heads, I think, both for ourselves if you have a chronic illness and other people as well. So I'm just kind of going into busting a few chronic illness myths, things that we say to ourselves. One that I cannot, it drives me nuts, is you don't look sick. This one is so common. Just because somebody looks fine on the outside doesn't mean that they're not struggling on the inside. I mean, if you see somebody that has a broken leg and they're in a wheelchair or something like that, it's easy to understand that they might not be up for running a marathon or taking the stairs. But if a person, on the other hand, doesn't have something that you can see on the outside, whether it's chronic illness or if it's MPF or some other invisible disability, it's so easy for us to just assume that everything is fine. I don't know how many times I have been home with a bad flare, and then I go to work when I feel like, okay, I can possibly muster this today, and I do my makeup and I put myself together and I get to work and everybody's like, oh, you look like you're feeling so great. You know, it's there's a lot of reasons why I do my makeup. One of them, when I was teaching, was I just can't deal with all the kids saying, "Oh, good God, Miss Jessie, why? What happened to your face?" I've gotten that one. What happened to your face? And it's just at some point, it's both for myself that I want to try to look a little bit put together, but it's also maybe I just don't have the energy to deal with all the questions about why I look like death, more or less. So just because somebody looks fine, that doesn't mean that everything's all easy peasy lemon squeezy. They're all 100% better. I'm just putting that out there. Make sure to ask instead of assuming. Myth number 2 would be, if you just tried harder, you'd feel better, or like you need to just suck it up. I think this is something that both people can say. Not everybody says it though. People might think it. Not everybody has the guts to say it to your face. But it's also something that sometimes I've told myself, oh my God, I need to just snap out of it. And at some point, you have to just say, you know what? That's not what this is about. Chronic illness isn't about willpower. Some days, just getting out of bed takes all the energy that you possibly have. It's super, super important to realize that it is not about willpower. This is an illness. This is something that you cannot control. And sometimes you might have to say that to people. Sometimes you might have to say it to yourself, honestly. So the myth number 3, you should just push through. Sometimes pushing through might work, but most of the times, if you're dealing with a chronic illness, pushing through is probably going to make it worse. Rest and pacing aren't signs of weakness. They're essential, because if you do push through, and I have done this so many times, I think one that I specifically remember at this point is Midsummer. We were going to go out to the cabin, celebrate Midsummer with the whole family. There were so many things that needed to get done, and I was like, bam, 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 getting everything done, packing everybody up, everybody in the van, heading out, buying the groceries that we needed for everything. And then by the time we actually got there, I was dead. It was so bad. It was like all of this pushing had just thrown me into an Uber flare. And the entire day of actual Midsummer, where I wanted to, spend time with the family, go down to the Midsummer pole, all of those things, I was like, no, I just kept falling asleep at random places because I kind of broke myself. It's not a question of pushing through and getting there. It's a question of making sure that when you get there, you'll actually have the energy to make it last and to make it enjoyable, not just to suffer through it, because that's not the whole point. But what's the whole point with a family holiday or anything that is worth doing is that you want to be able to enjoy it. So making sure that, the things that need to get done get a chance to get done, but also making sure that we rest in between tasks, that we pace ourselves. And those are not signs of weakness. That's just being smart. Work smarter, not harder, I guess could be applied here as well. Anyway, I think these myths can really, really mess with our heads, both with how we see ourselves, but also how other people treat us. And it makes it harder to ask for help and to set boundaries, or even to just be honest about what we need. So, have you ever felt misunderstood because of something invisible that you're dealing with? Feel free to send me a DM or leave a comment. I would really love to hear your story. Living with chronic illness has taught me things that I really never wanted to learn, but I'm grateful for the wisdom now. I think that's kind of how anything that is like a life lesson is. A lot of times it's not fun to go through, but at the end you go, you know what? I would not do without this piece of information or this knowledge. For me, the importance of pacing and listening to my body has been a huge, huge one. Just learning to respect my own limits isn't about giving up. It's being wise. Wise. It feels like such a hoity-toity kind of word, but like seriously, it is so valuable to be able to say I respect the limits of my body. It's not always easy, but once you try to get there, at some point you might have to learning to respect your limits is not about giving up. It's being wise. Okay, why being wise? It sounds like a bit of a hoity-toity kind of like uppity kind of word, but like, dude, it is so valuable to be able to respect your own limits and not just bust through them and break yourself in the process. Lesson number 2. And this one, as well as the first one, I would say it's not something that you learn and then you're done. Like, you're going to have to keep learning it at times. Setting boundaries and learning to say no. It's hard. It's so hard at times. And especially when it comes to ourselves. Setting boundaries are self-care. It's not selfish. It's saying, okay, I respect and I honor myself enough to say this is not doable. This is not workable for me. I feel like when it comes to other people, I have a much easier time to say no and to set boundaries if it has to do with my kids or a loved one and protecting their boundaries or protecting their well-being. But a lot of times we miss out on treating ourselves like we are a loved one. And caring about ourselves enough to say, I'm worthy of setting boundaries, and that's okay. It's not selfish. So that is very important. I think for me, because this has been such a difficult thing for me to do, I'm learning. I'm not saying that I have learned, but I am learning to not react, but to respond. I find that it's easy when somebody comes up and they have an idea and they're like, you know what, you would be so great for this, you should do this, blah, blah, blah. And my gut reaction is to say, oh, cool, yeah, that's great. I'd love to help you with that. But even if that might be a good fit for me, and it might be something that I can do, that doesn't mean that I should do it. And enough of those things adds up in the long run. So instead of reacting and saying, sure, I'm trying to teach myself to to respond instead of react, to say, I will think about it. That's really interesting. That's really cool. Sounds great. I need to think about it before I give a definitive answer. So before I say yes to anything, giving myself a time to pause and actually think, so it's not reactive. It's a response. It's not a reaction. So lesson number 3, practicing radical self-compassion, especially on tough days. It's so easy to be hard on yourself when you can't do what you used to be able to do. It's for me, it's been really difficult because I used to be very physical and danced and did so much, to not be able to just power through. And I think that there's sort of it sounds a little bit weird, but like a bit of a mourning process in grieving the things that you used to be able to do and now you can't. It's like, well, this used to be me. This isn't me anymore. What does that mean? Is this me failing? But it's not really failing, it's adapting. And everything in life changes. Nothing stays the same all the time. So giving ourselves that radical self-compassion, especially on tough days, and saying, this is me now, and I can love myself now. It's amazing that I used to be able to do all of those things. Right now, me giving the same thoughtfulness and love to people might look different, but I'm still me. I'm just a little bit different than I used to be. So, lesson number 4, letting go of perfection and embracing that flexibility that comes with the change. Chronic illness forces you to adapt. Sometimes that's not even saying the big things. Sometimes it's daily, because one day I might be fine and things are fairly easy, and the next day I might not be able to get out of bed. So learning to say it's okay if it's not perfect. It's okay if I don't do all the bells and whistles this time. It's okay if Christmas looks a little bit easy in some ways. Sometimes maybe I don't need to do everything from scratch. Maybe I don't need to bake muffins from scratch. Maybe it's okay to use a cake mix. Those kinds of things. Just saying it's okay to take shortcuts if it means that I'm saving spoons and I'm saving my energy. And embracing that flexibility and saying, you know what? Yesterday it worked. That's great. Today it doesn't work. And then going back to that self-compassion that we were talking about. These lessons, they're not really easy to learn. And I have to say, it's not something that you learn and then it's like, done deal. Wipe my hands. I'm good. I got this. It's not a linear process. It very much circles back. Sometimes, you just kind of lose your focus and you make bad decisions. Everybody does. So just saying, okay, these are things that I can remind myself. They have made me stronger. They've probably also made me more compassionate. I think it's taught me to be more myself and to accept myself a little bit better than I did before. So if we're going to just take a moment to reflect, what's a piece of hard-won wisdom that you've gained, whether it's from illness or just life being life? If you feel like sharing, I would love to hear your story. Even if you don't live with a chronic illness, these are lessons that can help anyone. Pacing is really important. Try to plan breaks in between in your day. Even if you feel fine, your future self will probably thank you for pacing and not going too nuts and getting wiped out in the process. Boundaries. Practice saying no to things that will drain you, and yes to things that will nourish you. Self-compassion. Notice your self-talk. Would you speak to a friend the way that you're speaking to yourself? because a lot of times we are really nasty and hard on ourselves, even if we show kindness to others. So being a kind person, that's not just how you treat other people, it's also how you treat yourself. Flexibility. Leave a little room for the unexpected. Sometimes the best moments are the unplanned ones. And saying it's okay if things have a little bit of that wiggle room, just kind of saying, okay, I'm going to give myself a bumper spoon. I call it a lot of times. Like, I can plan as much as I want, but sometimes things happen that are outside of the plan. So it can be good to give yourself a little bit of extra room. So here's a little bit of something I would like you to try to remember this week. I honor my limits, I celebrate my progress, and I give myself permission to rest. So what's one lesson that you've learned the hard way? And how has it made your life better? I would love it if you share this with me, and I would love to feature your story in a future episode. So please make sure that you leave a comment. Tell me what you're thinking, what's going on in your mind. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Peace Whimsy Co podcast. Remember, a little bit of whimsy can brighten every day.